Good. Hey, thanks for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah. So, been watching some documentaries, and one of the documentaries I watched was Delay, Deny, Hope You Die. Uh, and that one was really interesting to me. And you're with that show. Did you write that show or produce it or direct it, or all three?
Yeah.
All three?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's wow. That was a powerful one. I gotta
Yeah.
say, I'm a veteran myself, and I've spent time in Iraq. I don't have any personal dealings with burn pits. I didn't happen to see any when I was there in 2010, and my understanding is that a lot of the burn pit activity kind of happened in the earlier years of the wars, but it's still ongoing in some places too.
Yeah. I still get videos sometimes from people. Even I think last year, somebody sent me some from Qatar, I think it was,
Hmm.
where that they're still using burn pits, even though they're not supposed to.
Yeah. I talked to another lady. She's with an organization, and I hope to have her on for an interview as well. But she documents how the U.S. military does that domestically here in the United States, still in a lot of areas, which is concerning. It's not, it's open air burning of munitions. It's not burn pits per se, but it is munitions disposal via controlled burns here in the United States. There's many locations that they still do that, which is kind of alarming.
Yeah. I don't know the specifics in the U.S., but in the um, internationally anyway, a lot of times that work was outsourced to commercial companies like Halliburton, or a subsidiary of Halliburton called KBR. And I've seen the contracts myself, and in the contract it said that they had to follow all domestic EPA rules, which is pretty much spelled out. You can't burn this, you can't burn this, you can't burn this, you can't burn. And they did it anyway
Yeah.
because, as you probably know, if you can't sue the government, so KBR says we're just doing what the government tells us to do. Talk to the government, but you can't sue the government, so you're screwed.
Yeah. How did you get interested in this topic?
Well, I actually read a book. It was just a coincidence because I like to read a lot of nonfiction, and somehow I came across this book on Amazon, I think it was, and I'd never heard of anything about it before. It just sounded interesting to me, and so I read it, and I was shocked by what I read, and I thought, because this is my business, well, somebody should make a documentary about this, and I thought somebody would, but then a year or two went by, and I never heard anything. I didn't see anything, so I contacted the author who was in the documentary, Joe Hickman, and I said, "Has anybody talked to you?" Because I figured he'd be the first person they would talk to if they made a documentary. And he said no. And I said, "Well, I guess I have to do it now." And that was very difficult because even though I'm American, I live in Holland, so that's not very convenient when you want to make a documentary that's basically American focused. So that the whole making of the documentary is a story in itself because it was very low budget, and I would have had to travel all over the U.S. to find people who wanted to talk to me. I mean, the people in the documentary are in New York, and Joe's in Wisconsin, and people are in Texas and California and Oregon. So what I did was similar to this, thank God for the internet, was I found camera people in the area, and they went to the house, and then I would call in on my computer, and I would interview them by computer, which you can't tell the difference. And then they would ship me the footage, and I would edit all the stuff here in my attic where I am now. And so the whole making of is a whole bizarre story too. But it was hard actually to even find people. I don't know how you would react being an ex-military, but a lot of guys didn't want to talk to me. They were afraid because, of course, they all need to get benefits from the VA, and they have all kinds of stories to tell about the VA, and they were afraid. So it was really difficult to even find people that wanted to talk to me.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's Guys don't want to talk because when they finally get to the point where they've been recognized by the VA, the last thing they want to do is jeopardize that, because it can take years for guys to get disability
Yeah.
claims processed. And everyone kind of has a fear of the VA pulling the rug out from underneath of them and reprisals and things like that. And that's a low down dirty shame, really, when you
Yeah.
think about it. Is you should have no problem expressing your opinions in America, because we obviously have right to free speech without reprisal from an organization which is supposed to help veterans, but sometimes falls very short.
But it's getting, I mean, you say the right to free speech, I know, but it's kind of getting out of control, I think. I mean, I don't live there anymore, obviously, but I follow what's going on, and it's even getting worse now, I think. I mean, you can't voice an opinion, I mean, I don't know if you're a Republican or Democrat, but let's say you're a Republican. You can hardly have, if I'm a Democrat, we can hardly have conversations in America anymore in America, because I think you're automatically wrong because you like Trump, and you think I'm automatically wrong because I don't.
Yeah.
And you can't have a kind of conversation. So to come out against the VA, it's like you can't even just say these things don't work. It doesn't mean you hate the VA. It doesn't mean you hate the military. It doesn't mean you hate the president. But why can't you say this doesn't work and let's just correct it
Right.
without, being politically incorrect and being afraid for reprisals? And that's what you're supposed to be able to do, really.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it all starts with free speech, and one thing I heard which struck a chord with me very much was, free speech is critical, not only for our own freedoms, right? But free speech allows for free thought, right? And so if we're not allowed to speak what we think, well, then we're not having conversations. And really, that's how we really develop ideas, right? Is through dialect with other people. And if we're not having dialect, well, then ideas just aren't going anywhere, and they're not coming out, and they're not being developed. And good ideas don't get championed, and bad ideas don't get squashed. And it's a shame, because then we end up with a status quo, which isn't working for anybody.
I don't know if you remember, but in the documentary, one guy even said, we understand that stuff can happen in war. Just admit it, say you screwed up, and let's fix it.
Right.
And they won't do it. He wasn't asking for millions of dollars. He wasn't asking for people to go to jail. He's just, okay, it happened, it screwed up, let's fix it, let's learn from it, and let's move on. But I don't know why people can't do that. I don't get it.
From
You're
my
supposed to be able to
conversation.
learn from your mistakes. I mean, isn't that really true leadership? If you make a mistake, to just admit, I screwed up, guys, this is how we're going to fix it. And people actually have more respect for you if you do that, instead of you hide and cover up and lie and cheat, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. From my understanding, when talking with veterans and people who are professional veteran advocates, is it really comes down to the dollar. They don't want to admit they made a mistake, because if they made a mistake, then the amount of money they would have to pay out would be so extraordinary, it would bankrupt the VA overnight. And
yeah,
that is true tenfold over, and that is true of Agent Orange alone.
yeah.
So, not including burn pits and everything else, and PTSD and all the other things, the military is so incredibly dangerous just by its existence. Forget being in war. Just being in the military can be hazardous to your health, for many, many, many,
Well,
many reasons.
well, that's where the title comes from, right? That they just hope that you're just going to die and fade away, and that the problem will eliminate itself. And everybody that I talk to thinks it's going to be like Agent Orange. In 40 years,
Yep.
there'll only be a handful of guys left over. So then they'll be able to admit it, and then they'll be able to pay. Like, there were still settlements coming in the 2000s for stuff that happened in the Vietnam War. They were still paying people out,
Yep.
because a lot of people that got sick weren't around anymore. But wouldn't it be cheaper, if it's a question of dollars, to just do it right the first time?
I agree.
And
It
not,
would be the right thing to do. Absolutely. No questions asked. It would be the right thing to do. And
because they had incinerators. They were supposed to use incinerators, and a lot of those incinerators were ordered, but they just sat there unused because they didn't have people to operate them, or whatever. They had to install them, they had to maintain them. It was just easier, they thought at the time, to just burn stuff. And, you know, it's kind of funny too, when we were talking about, I was talking to one guy, he said his base would get attacked once in a while because the smoke is like a flag. Here we are. So it's like a target. They would just target the smoke. And we're not even talking about the locals, because obviously this poisonous cloud doesn't stop at the walls of the base. It goes out, and I know we're not supposed to care about them. They were the enemy, right?
Right.
Supposedly. But a lot of those people had nothing to do with it either. They're just innocent women and children and guys just trying to mind their own business, and they're getting poisoned too. And there's a lot of rates of cancer for the locals, and that you never, I mean, so this whole thing affects, you know, millions of people, really.
Yeah, you know, it's been said that the military is the largest polluter on the planet. And at first, when I heard that, I was like, nah. But the more I look into it, I'm convinced that's true. And what got me interested in this topic was I do a lot of work with veterans and telling these kind of stories because I think it's important for people to hear them, you know, and if people like us weren't doing these kinds of things, it would be all too easy to forget about kind of the plight of the veteran, you know, and I'm a veteran myself, and I'm lucky that I don't really have a whole lot of health effects, you know, to that degree. But, you know, when I talk to these other guys, I'm like, man, you know, and nobody knows. And it's a shame. So I love spreading the message. But what got me started on this whole line of thought and this whole kind of mission that I have is I talked to some guys who were stationed on a little island called Johnson Island. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So it's a little island 750 miles west of Hawaii. And, you know, I've done a mini series on that, and we were talking to veterans who were there. And so this island was just a little piece of sand, and then they expanded it. Well, then they tested nuclear weapons on it in the 50s, 60s through the 70s. They had 3 nuclear incidents, 2 explosions on a launch pad, and then a high altitude explosion raining weapons grade plutonium down all over the island. Not a nuclear detonation, but a nuclear incident, right? And so they scoop it all up and they just push it into the ocean. And then they come in later on and they dredge that part of the ocean up to expand the island and recontaminate the island. So that happened on 3 different occasions. So it's a radioactive wasteland. And if that weren't enough, they stored all of the Agent Orange after Vietnam on this island, all of it, right? So they brought it from Biloxi, Mississippi, which is where it was stored in the United States. They brought it to this island, and then they brought in all of the Vietnam Agent Orange, and they brought it to this island. They put it on the beach, right? Hundreds of thousands of gallons of Agent Orange, and it sits there leaking all over the place, right? And it's an active base. People are there. They deal with an average of 15 leaking barrels a week, and they have to go and like repackage this Agent Orange into barrels that don't leak. It's not sheltered. They're not in bunkers. And it takes a long time, but they finally incinerate all this Agent Orange with this very high-tech incinerating plant. It's an entire plant. And they finally get rid of it. Well, what they find out is that these guys who work there are coming down with cancer in crazy rates. And it has to do with the Agent Orange. And not only that, the plutonium. So they are automatically denied for benefits from their Agent Orange exposure, right? There's no service connection between service on Johnson Island and then cancer. And it's it's just a repeat of what they did with the Agent Orange veterans of Vietnam and what they're doing now with the burn pits. It's unlikely that they'll ever fully acknowledge that, but that's kind of what got me going on this is there's more than just burn pits and more than just Agent Orange. It's so incredibly prevalent all across the world, really, you know, and there's so many stories to be told to highlight some of this.
And I think a lot of people, citizens, don't know anything about it. When I made this documentary, just even my friends and family, nobody knew about it. And we did play in cinemas around the U.S. We did like a tour, about 20 cities, and it did play on one local PBS channel in Los Angeles. But for the rest, I sold it to channels outside the U.S., but nobody in the U.S. would, you know, of any major consequence would broadcast it. I don't know that's one of those things where, you just have to guess. I mean, it won prizes, it won some awards, other channels bought it. So people seem to like it. So you would think it was good enough. So, but I mean, it's possible that everybody who's responsible at Netflix and HBO and Showtime, and they didn't like it. That's possible. But the bottom line is it
That's not
didn't really
possible.
get,
It's a good show. That's not possible.
well, I mean, either that or there's some other political reason that it hasn't been shown. And I don't, like you could argue that people outside the U.S. maybe want to show it because they want the U.S. to look bad. I mean, you could think there's maybe some political reason, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, people who've seen it seem to like it. But it hasn't really, we weren't really able to get that major coverage that I was hoping for. Because I think if a lot of people saw it, they would be shocked. Now, Tom Udall, who was the senator who's in the documentary, he's now a retired senator, he actually invited me to Washington. And I went to Washington and we played it privately for a number of senators. And they all came up to me, Republicans and Democrats, afterwards. I didn't know anything about this, and Tom Udall was really fighting for it. But they all came up to me, I'm going to get people on it and we're going to do something about it. Well, that was 2 years ago.
Right.
And nothing happened. So I was hoping that somehow, by just getting it on a channel or something that had some viewers, people might find out about it. But it never really got traction, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about the industry to say how that works. I mean, it was a great documentary. It was very compelling. It told the story, I think, perfectly. I don't know why some get picked up and some don't. I really don't. But I do wish it got everywhere. But I have noticed, and this is just kind of my perception, that because it's veteran centered, that it's not it's not going to be as popular as some of the others. Like the cultural feel right now is race relations and police type things. And if it was about that, boom, you would have been 10 million viewers, right? But veterans,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's hard to get people to care about veteran issues. It really is. They think that you thank you for your service and that's it. Have a nice life. Well, I wish it was that was the end of it, but usually the struggle continues well after service for a lot of guys. And it's hard to get people
It's
to care.
funny how also, I noticed it because I'm kind of an outsider now, but it's funny the difference also. I know a lot of Americans just think that Europe is, communistic and, whatever. But it's just funny how they deal with these things, because this happened in Holland too. Last year, there was an issue about burn pits. And the government right away started an investigation, started conducting research, started getting treatment for the soldiers. They didn't come out and deny it. They thought, hey, is this going on? We need to stop it. We need to figure out what's going on. We need to test it. And they got help, and it never became an issue. And I just wonder, what's the difference? Why can't America do that? Why can't America just say, hey, is this a problem? We need to check it out. We need to get it fixed. We need to apologize, and we need to help these guys. Why is it seems everything is so difficult in America nowadays?
Yeah. No, I'd agree. And I don't know a whole lot about Europe, but what I can tell about Europe is they're more cautious. It seems like things are not allowed to happen until they're proven safe. But in America, things happen
Yeah.
until they're proven to be unsafe. And it's a
I mean, you
total
notice it now with this whole Corona thing. We went into lockdown, man, February. We went into total lockdown in February. And the president went on TV, gave a speech, said, this is what we're going to do. Whether you agree with it or not, I mean, he showed real leadership and said, this is it. This is what we're going to do. And okay, Holland is a lot smaller.
right.
But we do have different provinces and different cities. And so kind of like states in America. So they could have done things differently if they wanted to. But okay, this is what the president said. This is what we're going to do. People didn't like it. But we went down to lockdown until July. So like 4 months, and slowly started open things up, and we're still not completely open, but slowly, and things are going a lot better now. But you just see in America, for example, a real good. It just seems to be getting worse, and nobody wants to. One state does this, and another state does this. And if you're a Republican governor, you want this, and the Democratic senator, you want that. And I don't want to wear masks; it affects my freedom, and it's just like so tiring.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it really anymore. I guess maybe I've been gone too long, but I just don't get it. Just
It's a sport, you know. In America, politics is a sport. You know, you have a side, and you have, you know, these things, right, that we're gonna champion, and they have those things that they're gonna champion, and you know, we fight about it, and it's a sport. And I think
I guess,
politics, yeah, politicians have picked up on that, and you know, and they've used that to their advantage. And sometimes they argue in person, but at the end of the day, they're doing the same thing. Case in point, like the veterans, right? So Republicans and Democrats, we're going to get on this. We're going to get on this, you know, and but then nothing really happens, you know. I think there's a lot of theatrics that they give the population, but at the end of the day, the government's going to do what the government's going to do, right? And they'll tell us something different, but they're going to keep marching to the same drum that they have. And they protect their institutions, really, I think, is their first and foremost goal. And the military is an institution, right? And long ago, you know, the Democrats were anti-war, and now not so much, and they're both kind of on the same page, and they protect the institution. So if it comes down to, does it make the institution look bad, then I think Republicans and Democrats both close ranks, right? And then nothing really happens when it should happen. When, you know, 50 years ago, right, you would have maybe some more real change, because you would have the political will to do it. But everything is
do you
just
know?
aligned.
Do you know a woman named Rosie Lopez?
I don't think so.
You should talk. You should talk to her if you're interested in this further, because she runs an organization called Burn Pits 360.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Okay, yeah, her husband served overseas. I think he was a police officer in Texas, and he came back and couldn't do his job, and he's now sick and he can't work. And she's been fighting this for about 10 years, I think now. And she works a lot with the politicians, and she tries to get new legislation. She could really talk to you a lot about what she's gone through and the battles that she's fought from a political point of view, because they've been, you know, like I said, they've been doing this for 10 years. They got, you know, a lot of famous people, or famous, I should say, prominent people from doctors and some politicians on their side to fight with them. Jon Stewart, the comedian, is also trying to help them out. But I mean, she'd be an interesting person to talk to, because she specializes, let's say, in the political side of it, really trying to get new legislation.
Yeah.
And she could tell you some stories, I'm sure, about the things that she's run up against. And it's been going on for years and years. And a lot of these people, including her husband, have this lung disease, which is actually terminal. It's a terminal lung disease. And they found pieces of metal in them, and that could only get there from toxic exposure. And all the private doctors, well, for another example, remember in the documentary, there's one guy who had a tracheostomy.
Yep.
His private doctors tell him you could only get this from toxic exposure. But the doctors at the VA, and the problem is also, what happens a lot is that these diseases don't happen in a day.
Right.
So you go home, and then 5 years later, you start to get a cough, or you start to get sick or whatever, and then you get treatment. But then maybe it's 5 to 10 years later when you're actually diagnosed with cancer. And then the military says, well, I mean, that was 10 years ago that you were in Iraq. Prove that this is service related. Well, my doctor says that I have toxic exposure. Okay, we'll go to our doctor and see what he says. And then the VA doctor says it could be anything. You know, it could just be the dust that you were exposed to over there. Doesn't necessarily mean you were exposed to poisons. And so just, it's like a big runaround.
Yep.
That guy needs special food, because obviously he can't eat. They have to rely on donations from friends and family, because the VA won't even reimburse them for the liquid that he needs to survive.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. You know, and I hear millions of stories just like that. And, back to the Johnson
Why do
Island
people
thing.
then, I don't know how you feel, but one thing that every single one of these guys told me was that they would do it again.
Yeah.
Even knowing what they know now, they would go back and they would serve again. And I would say to them, look, I'm sorry, that I don't understand. That I don't get. Well, and they believe in serving their country. Okay, that's nice. But you know the end result and you would still do it. Yeah, it's not the army that did it to me. It's the people that did it to me. Okay. But so it just makes me wonder why anybody would serve. I mean, there's enough of these stories going around now that people must know that something like this could happen. It's not just the enemy you have to worry about.
Right. Yeah, and that's different for everybody. I myself kind of had a call it a revelation, when I was in the military and I had gotten back from Iraq. And when I was in Iraq, I saw a bunch of things that changed my opinion, right? And I used to be one of those, you can call them neoconservatives, right? That's how we call them in America. When I was 18 years old, and I saw a lot of things that I disagreed with not necessarily the foreign policy per se, but that is part of it. But it's another thing if you're going to have a foreign policy of going to war in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's another thing that the execution of that as well, right? So like if you're going to invade Iraq and Afghanistan, don't do it with a hand tied behind your back, right? And just waste time and waste lives, right? And that was what I had a problem with. And then I saw enough things that convinced me to be solidly libertarian by the time I got out of there. I love my country. I love veterans. I want to help veterans. I don't agree with everything my government does at all, and it's like I said, it's the execution of that because they did not do the job well, right? And if they did the job well, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We could debate the foreign policy and the starts and all that kind of stuff, but they don't even try to do the job well. And that's what really irritated me. And I see them with like the burn pits, knowing that that's a bad idea and knowing that that's against the law and knowing that there's a better option, and yet they just do the easy thing anyway. That just never sit well with me. And I can't explain it other than there's no accountability because the machine is so big, it's so powerful. There's nobody who can stand up against it. And those who do, you're brave, but good luck to you.
Yeah, there are consequences. And there was a guy in the documentary who worked for KBR who said, I was there. I saw what they throw into the thing. Well, he lost his job and he was threatened. I don't know if you remember, but there was a woman also who talked about the contracts that KBR got. Those were, because there's a whole political thing too, where KBR was a subsidiary of Halliburton, and Dick Cheney used to be CEO of Halliburton.
Right.
He went and became vice president and then gave them these contracts, no bid contracts. They just got the contracts to do it. Mm-hmm. She even said, I never saw such fraud in my life with the contract. She got fired. So it takes a very strong person to stand up and come forward because there are going to be consequences. Right. And even if you're right, if you're alone, it doesn't really matter because you'll get fired and people will forget about it. I mean, it's almost like hundreds of people have to come forward before somebody will listen.
Absolutely. And that's what it takes. And, that's part of the reason why I do these videos because, on Facebook, there are many groups for burn pit survivors, right? So there's thousands and thousands of them out there. Some of them are very active in the groups. Some of them don't post anything because they are scared of reprisal because maybe they are on active duty or maybe they worked for a civilian contractor. They'll talk to me in private, right? I've talked on the phone with a couple of different people who said, listen, here's some information for you to consider. I don't want to be on the record at all in any of these kind of conversations because I have things to worry about, reprisals and such. And, then there's the lucky few who don't have to worry about reprisals because they are either financially fine, not in a position to be compromised. And those are the world changers, people like yourself who are not afraid to speak up and speak truth, even though it's uncomfortable. And even though that, it's unpopular.
And some of them are just so sick that they don't care anymore.
Right.
They have nothing else to lose. And they think, yeah, what are you going to do? You're going to kill me? Well, I'm already dying.
Yeah.
So, they have nothing to lose. So then they come forward. They just wanted it to be, they know that they're beyond help. but they hope that it won't happen again. I don't have that much faith, to be honest, because you would have thought after Agent Orange that it wouldn't have happened again.
Right.
But it will happen again with something else. I don't know how these guys can sleep at night, to be honest with you, because I couldn't do it. But I just happened to see a thing. It was just a thing on YouTube that I just happened to see today, where Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez was talking to a private contractor, something totally unrelated. He was selling some kind of a part that cost him $30 to make, and he was selling it to the government for like $30,000 or something like that. And she was grilling him and grilling him and grilling him. And he just looked at her and just shrugged his shoulders and says, they don't have to buy it if they don't want to.
It's true.
And I thought, yes, it is. And I mean, in a way, technically he's right. He's like, I told him.
But they will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I thought and then that made me think about the burn pits too. Yeah. I mean, it's just like KBR, who was responsible for it, ultimately, they could have told us to stop if they wanted to. And we would have done it the way they wanted to, probably. They probably would have. If the government had come to them and said, stop doing it, they probably would have. But for them, it was easier and faster. They didn't have to buy all those incinerators, just burn it. And if nobody tells them to stop, why should they stop?
Yep.
But I don't know, ultimately, who's responsible. Is that, I mean, the Pentagon? Is it? I don't get it. Because when I talked to Senator Udall, I asked him that question, and he didn't have an answer. So somehow, like you said, the machine is so big. Who is ultimately responsible? Nobody knew. I can't find the one guy who could have told him to stop.
Nobody is responsible is the thing.
Yeah.
The way it's set up, like, you got to talk to my boss. Oh, well, you got to talk. And it's just shifting blame and perpetuity until you get so high up the blame chain that you're untouchable anyway, and then they just stonewall you.
Okay, then ultimately it's the president.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the buck stops with him. He's the commander-in-chief of the military.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then they're all to blame, because it was going on during Clinton, it was going on during Bush, it was going on during Obama. Mm-hmm. And either they didn't know, which is possible, I suppose. I mean, although
they should.
I mean, I suppose that's a flaw in and of itself. If your people aren't telling you what's going on, then you have a bigger problem. Or they're misinformed. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, because they could have stopped it. They could just say that it ends now. Use those incinerators, and that's it. But, and also, I mean, the lawyer who's in the documentary, who was actually suing KBR on behalf of it, he told me his whole job now is suing KBR, because this was just one thing. They had a problem with the electricity. I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny, but they on many bases, they installed the electricity wrong, and guys were getting and girls were getting electrocuted in the showers.
Yep.
And nothing happened. There was a problem with the water. Bottled water was being poisoned somehow. There was something in the plastic or something that was poisoning it. Nothing ever happened. So they just, on all fronts, were doing really shoddy work that were costing people's lives, and nothing has ever happened. Nobody's lost their job. Nobody's been fined. Nothing's ever happened, except the soldiers die.
I'm curious about the water thing. So, as I recall, when I was in Iraq in 2010, they pumped water right out of Saddam Hussein's man-made lakes, right? And they had a reverse osmosis plant, and then they would filter it, reverse osmosis it. They would put it in these cheap plastic bottles, and then it would sit out in the sun and bake at 130 degrees.
Exactly. Yeah.
For months, and it tasted like crap, but it's what we had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to say you should run to the doctor, but if you feel anything, you should, because one of the doctors told me that this is probably going to be going on for years. You're going to get a cough, and you won't necessarily put one and one together, or you'll feel tired for a week or two or something. He said, anybody in the military who gets sick should go to the doctor right away. He said, because this is going to be going on for years. He said, because these things take time to develop. And like I said, it was water. Okay, you would have known if you were electrocuted, but there's water, there's the burn pits. It's just, I mean, it's just a mess, just a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look into that water thing. That sounds like a conversation in and of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to devote some resources to that because now I'm super curious. But yeah, the
And
electrical thing.
somehow he couldn't get any traction. They took it to, the highest district court or something. It was in Delaware. I don't know why it was in Delaware, and the judge threw it out. And I asked him, well, why? It seems so obvious. I mean, I saw the contract myself that they had to follow EPA regulations. It seemed so black and white, but he just couldn't. And remember, there's the guy who works for KBR's in the documentary,
Mhm.
and you hear the lawyer saying to him, because they got indemnification, right, from the military.
Right.
The military indemnified them for anything. And he even says, even if soldiers die, yes. Even if foreign soldiers die, yes. Even if locals die, yes. We have complete indemnification. So they got total indemnification from the Army. So and then you can't sue them because they have indemnification, and you can't sue the Army because you can't sue the government.
Right.
So everybody's covered. It's just
Everybody but the grunts.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, my father was in the Marines, but I didn't grow up like in a military family, so it's not like I have this cause or something. I just don't like injustice. It just makes me mad. So, and I don't understand it either. To be honest with you, I don't get it. Like I couldn't go to sleep right. If I was to push a button and know that I was going to poison a river or something, I just wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't make those decisions, I suppose.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the men who do make those kind of decisions, I haven't been in that position, so I can't say for sure, but there has to be a certain level of comfort with the ability to make those kind of decisions to be in those kind of positions in the first place, I guess.
Yeah, the lawyer told me that I think they called it, he said we call them armchair generals, because they just sit back in their office and they push a button, and somewhere out there something happens. And then they go home and play baseball with their kid and have dinner and watch a movie and go to bed.
Yeah.
But because they're not confronted with it, they don't see it. It's just it's over there somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's very easy if you're not involved on a day-to-day basis, I guess, to just separate yourself from it. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And the guys who are over there and executing those plans, they are incentivized not to raise red flags, right? Because they have their careers to worry about.
Yeah.
So they'll downplay what they can downplay to the extent that they can live with themselves, which is it's war. So
And some of them told me that they did question it, and they were either told just shut up and do your job,
right.
or they thought, well, it can't be dangerous. They wouldn't put us in this situation if they knew we were being. So they have this blind faith too.
Right.
They just think, I mean, nobody would be that stupid to put us in this position, our own guys. So it's one or the other, and either way, the result is bad.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, hey, I want to thank you for coming on. Do you working on any other new documentaries that might be interesting to anybody seeing this?
I actually just finished one. It's a different kind of documentary. It's about prisoners in, well, I want to say in Texas. Maybe it happens elsewhere, but there's a prison in Texas, and when these guys are released from prison, they're given $50, and the door opens up, and they're just let out. And some of them have family members that pick them up, and some don't. And so they've served literally 28 years in jail, one guy, and he comes out to prison. Well, what am I supposed to do? Well, there's the bus station. Oh, so they walk down to the bus station, and their life starts. So we spent a week there talking to these guys who were coming out. What are you going to do, and what problems are you facing? And that was pretty interesting too, I have to say, because I mean, people commit crimes, should go to jail. I got it. But some of these people serve their time. They paid their debt, and then they come out, and you wonder why. I think the recidivism rate is 80% or something, and you wonder why. Because they're literally dumped on the street with $50, and goodbye. One guy said to me, I've been in jail for 30 years. I have no family. I have no friends. I have nothing. I have no education. I never lived on my own. He was 50. So he went to jail when he was 20, yeah? 20. I never lived on my own. I don't know. I have $50 in my pocket. I mean, I'm laughing because it's just so ridiculous. He wanted to go to Galveston. I don't know if you know Texas, which is south of Texas. And the guy selling the bus ticket said, you can go to Houston. Yeah, but I have to go to Galveston. The bus doesn't go to Galveston. Well, how do I go to Galveston? Good luck.
Yeah.
So it literally starts 5 minutes after you're out of jail. And he said, I feel like taking a rock and just throwing it through the window so that they'll come pick me up and put me back in jail now, because I don't know any, and you're just like, I mean, it's hard to feel sorry for them in a way, because these are rapists, and we didn't talk to any murderers, but we talked to rapists and child molesters and violent criminals. And you think, okay, you're in jail for a reason. But on the other hand, you think, if there's any chance at all that they can rehabilitate themselves, it's lost on this one block that they're just walking from the prison. It was pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting, I have to say. It really also opened your eyes up to just stuff that you don't even know that's happening, that's going on. And when you talk to these guys, man, you have no help. There's no hope at all. How can they survive on the outside? And then when I first came to Holland, I always thought it was weird because the prison sentences were so short. You'd murder somebody and you get 4 years in jail or something like that.
Yeah.
But then I saw, you get 4 years of jail, but then you get years and years and years in a treatment facility. They don't just dump you back on the street. Here, things are more focused on rehabilitation and trying to get people back into society, trying to fix them, because there's obviously something wrong with them if you're raping people or murdering people. Whereas in America, it's all about punishment and revenge and punishment and revenge.
Right.
And I mean, it's almost better if you're locked up forever. But if you're locked up for 5 or 10 or 15 years and then you get out, what do we really think is going to happen to these people? So that was also a bizarre experience, I have to say. One guy was an artist. I know I digress. Sorry, long answer to a short question, and he showed me this painting. His picture was unbelievable. And you think, but they also came out at the wrong time, right? Because they come out right when Corona's hitting.
Right.
And they're going to have all these people that are going to be looking for work now. Well, who are you going to hire? Even if he's a great artist, you're going to hire this artist who's been in jail for 25 years, or you're going to hire this guy who's just getting out of college and on the straight and narrow. And well, the answer is obvious, right? This guy had tattoos. He had no teeth. Really nice guy. I mean, he was friendly, but he was a child molester. So you're like, sorry, I didn't say it to him, but I felt like saying, good luck, man. You're never going to get a job anywhere. And he was really talented. And you just think, wow, and we left there just thinking, what's going to happen to these guys? They're all going to be back. They're all going to be back. But it also makes you think, why can't we? One thing I noticed about America is that you don't really notice this until you leave. But America has a lot of what I call a not invented here mentality. If we didn't invent it, it's no good. It's wrong. And we're not interested in how they do things in Europe and how they do things over there, and because they're communists and socialists, and we're not interested in that stuff. And I think, look, there's a lot of things I don't like about it. I'll be honest. Some things it's too socialist. That's true. But on the other hand, I mean, I have kids. They went to college. Everybody can go to college if they want to, because you just push a button on the computer and you can get a loan. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, rich, poor. Your tuition is paid. It's a loan, very low interest. It's almost a zero interest loan. You're not going to have school debt for 20 years. That's a good idea. We have, and I know this is a sin, we have universal health care. Yeah, okay, our taxes are higher, but everybody is covered. Everybody has insurance. It's good medical care. Everything is fine. Now we have some other things where I think they go too far. So no country's perfect. But why can't you sometimes look and say, hey, look what they do for prisoners. Look what they do for education.
Yeah.
Maybe we could take that idea from Germany, or we could take that idea from France, or we could take that idea from Holland, and we could put our own spin on it. But it's okay sometimes to look outside your borders and think, hey, that's not such a bad idea. Have you seen the documentary from Michael Moore? It's called, I think it's called Where to Invade Next.
No, I haven't seen that one.
You should watch it. It's a good invade. What he does is he goes into countries, and he's gonna steal an idea. So, well, in Germany is a good example. Now in America, you have all this story about we need to tear down these monuments to this. With Germany, they're doing the exact opposite. They're making sure they're not hiding the past.
Right.
And they have a pretty horrible past.
Right.
They're making sure that people know this is what we did to the Jews, and they're keeping the concentration camps open, and they're making sure that people understand. And he didn't go to Holland, but I think he went to some Scandinavian country, and a prison, a maximum security prison, was like a farm. And we're trying to teach these people how to get back into society and stuff. And sometimes I think America could use a little bit of that. Let's just look and learn from other. It doesn't mean we're bad. It doesn't mean we're terrible. Let's just take some ideas and maybe we can learn from that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but that's kind of what I was trying to show with this new documentary, is just, again, try to make people aware of what's going on, because you probably never knew that. Every day, and there's 25,000, every day, about 200 people walk from the prison. They walk down this bus station and they go out into the world every day, hundreds of guys. And where are they now? They're on the streets somewhere. I don't know.
Doing something.
So,
well, hey, it's been a great conversation. I look forward to seeing your new documentary. So when that comes out, be sure to shoot me a link to that.
Yeah, I'll let you know if I can get anybody interested in it. I probably should have asked you at the beginning, but where was this live, or are you going to?
Yeah, so it's not live, no, but I'll post this on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you want to check that out, you can see a lot of interviews with the Johnson Island guys and the burn pit guys, and this is just kind of my thing. Telling unusual veteran stories is kind of what I'm into. I do a lot of work.
Send me a link to your channel, because I've got about 5,000 or 6,000 people on my burn pits Facebook page. They might be interested in seeing it, and
okay.
So if you send me a link, then I can share it.
Yeah, no, I will send you a link as soon as I get this posted.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.